Okay, so welcome everybody. Today we have Chris Saunby with us. So Nigel's going to go through and read this bio in a moment. But thank you so much for being here, Chris. This is so helpful to our members because listening to how successful people, and especially people that have got to an executive level in corporate in the corporate world, it's really helpful for people to firstly realize that you're human, and you have to overcome doubts, fears, and a journey to get to where you've got to. But it really helps people see patterns in themselves and makes them realize that they can actually overcome this and they can get better. So
Absolutely.
honestly, we really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for giving us your time. And you are in the UK and it's 5 o'clock on a Friday evening. So it's definitely giving us time up. So yeah.
That's fine, yeah.
Right, okay, so let's jump into this bio. So Chris is a business study graduate and a senior operations and supply chain leader with 37 years experience across ASDA and Walmart. He held senior leadership roles including SVP, Supply Chain and Replenishment, Walmart Canada, and Senior Director, Supply Chain Strategy and Development for ASDA/Walmart, alongside leading major distribution changing programs in the UK. His career has included work across multiple international markets, including the US, Germany, Russia, and Canada. Today, Chris is a supply chain and logistics consultant, helping businesses improve operational performance, strengthen inventory control, and drive cost efficiencies, while maintaining strong planning discipline and compliance. He's also active in non-for-profit work through community sport, mentoring, and school governance.
Wow.
Very good bio,
That is
Chris.
an incredible bio, yes.
Busy.
Yes, very busy.
Well, honestly, yeah, thank you for joining us, Chris.
My pleasure.
Amazing. I'm going to throw our first question that we always ask all of our guests. So please feel free to take your time with this one. But can you walk us through your career path, kind of from the beginning, and tell us, was it the career path that you envisioned at the beginning, or when you first started out, or did it evolve in unexpected ways, and how did that work out?
So thanks for having me. And if you don't understand some of the things I'm saying, I'm sure you guys can translate or as we go through it.
English, no problem.
So yeah, thanks. So my career path was very different to what I expected. So I went through school, college, did my GCSEs, all that type of things. And I got to what we call A levels in the UK and was flying high, and then sort of fell off a cliff. I was doing maths, business studies, and business studies and sociology at the time, and I thought I was on my way, doing really, really well. And I hit a big bump in the road, and I couldn't cope with the maths side of it, and kept trying, and I didn't get the grades that I wanted. So I had everything mapped out where I wanted to be. But whilst it was difficult for me at the time, was probably my first learning experience in where I was going, because I thought I was on my way. My mates were all in the same place. We were going to go to university, go off and do stuff and all that. But I suddenly realised I wasn't at that point as good as I thought I was, and it was a bit of a reality check. So got through all that and went off to university and I did a degree in business studies, but specialised in marketing. So my dream at the time, and you've got to go back to the 80s, this was all about advertising, marketing, and a real world of advertising that had taken off and was a very exciting place to work at the time. So I went into that, overcome everything, got my degree with a distinction, and started off working towards where I wanted to be in marketing. The next big hurdle came that the big marketing companies wouldn't take you on unless you had some experience. And you couldn't get a job in marketing until you had the experience. So it was going round in circles. So they said you had to have a year's worth of experience either in retailing or in selling. And whilst I thought that would put my career on pause for a little while, I took a decision to go into the retailing side. Always had an interest in it, and I'm always one of those geeky people. I pick up a product and I look where it was made, where it's come from, and all those things. So that sort of carried me through from where I wanted to be. And at the time, I just took whichever graduate scheme was available, because I got offered a place with Marks and Spencer's, one with Woolworths, which was big in the UK at the time, and ASDA was a very small company that had 50 shops, and it just really started its growth. It started in the 60s, and it was just really in its growth pattern. And they just opened a brand new store in my hometown. So spoke to them and signed up for a year's graduate scheme, thinking that I'd do that and then go straight back into my marketing world that I wanted to go into. That was 37 years ago, and I stayed with ASDA and Walmart all the way through, because what I realised very quickly was I could do what I wanted to do within my marketing sort of side of my brain, but do it within retailing. And there was a lot more opportunity in the retail side than I ever thought there was going to be. So I joined their graduate scheme, and ironically, it was the very first graduate scheme that ever started. And there was 10 of us started. There was only 2 of us succeeded the first month, but we got through all of that. So I just stuck with retailing from there, and I sort of got involved with the retail store side and enjoyed all the rest of it. And then so opportunities grew into regional management, specializations in different product groups. I got really interested in store development, so we're doing revamps of stores and building new stores. Not myself personally, but we got involved, with the store side of opening a new store, and that's what excited me. So that sort of took its course, and then from then worked into ASDA House, set up the supply chains with many other people, set up centralised distribution. So I went from probably a third of my career in stores to a third of my career in physical supply chain. The nuts and bolts of physically buying in products, ordering for stores and to DCs. Then I went into physical distribution, which I'll probably cover off later on why that was a challenge, but went into physical distribution to try and do something different and to sort of educate myself where I was going. Did work on mergers and acquisition when we bought another retailer, and then went into strategy after that point. And in amongst all of that, 37 years, probably to some people probably weren't born 37 years ago, but when you actually think about my career in 37 years, it really was working for 3 very different companies. So there was ASDA when I joined it, very small company, private equity, money, and then got taken over, became a PLC on the stock exchange. So you've got different accountability and responsibilities. And then working for Walmart was a very different way of working, a pleasurable, and I think one of the most interesting things I've probably ever done is experiencing working through Walmart. So it was probably 3 different companies and 4 different sectors of the business, if you know what I mean. So if you took it as working for divisions of the business, I've probably had 12 jobs in the time I've been there. But all the way through, the interest in the way retail works and the way people look at it, and very simply, people look at they go in, everything has to be there on the shelf at the time they want it and at the price they want it. Nobody's got a clue about what happens behind the scenes. And, I've always believed my job should be to make it that way, that nobody needs to worry about all that. As long as it's there in the right condition, at the right time, price, all those things, that's the jobs we're paid for. So it's not where I was going. It's not where I started in my direction. But I've never really looked back and really thought a lot about the beginnings of it. And the reason I mentioned it was in the 80s. I look at marketing now, and anybody going into marketing, it's obviously a very, very different space now, with social media space and all the rest of it. So it's not the physical environment I was going to aim to work in. But along the way, sort of challenge myself in different directions, but always with that an interest of not dissatisfied or bored with the job I was doing, but there was always something else. There was always something else to learn, or how does that work, or how does that work, or where do all these vehicles come from, or how do we get stuff from China, or whatever it was. Always it always interested me, and that's what's always sort of motivated me to stay with the company. And it's been an amazing journey, and with that you meet amazing people, and I genuinely mean that. You meet a lot of amazing people on the way through, and and a lot of those people are still out there and in contact with, and all the rest of it. So in a nutshell, that's broadly where it started, and probably where I've got to. The latter part now, the decision to move on from Walmart and from ASDA was purely, I'd come to a realization that I was starting to do. I'd come back into ASDA after working in Canada for many years, 4 years, and we were doing stuff that I was doing 10 years before that, and the business was stalling a bit. And I've always had a philosophy that if I'm not adding value or I'm not enjoying it, then I shouldn't be there. And whilst it was encouraged to be there, encouraged to stay, I just made a decision that, I needed to allow people that were going to be there for the next 5 years to move in, because I wasn't committed to the next 5 years. So it wasn't an easy decision. It was difficult to make, but in hindsight, it was the right decision at the right time for me personally. COVID got in the way, which made a bit of a mess of things, but it was a transition out. And then what I do now is I don't engage from a consultancy point of view with the big retailers. I look at sort of mid-tier retailers. So WH Smith's, I've been there. It's mid-tier companies who need help and support to move them to the next sort of level and make them more profitable. So, I could quite easily, many of my colleagues have gone back into the big retailers, and it would be easy to do, but I wouldn't be fair to myself in terms of what I wanted to do differently. And I think using my knowledge and experience to help other companies is probably better spent, if you understand what I mean. But gives me the opportunity to experiment with different things. So we've set up a couple of small companies and SME companies. I sponsor a couple of companies who make wacky things like 3D printers also. But it's getting involved with different things and trying to help people move, not into the massive $1 billion corporate world, but get them onto the next level or move them up to the next notch. And sometimes, to be honest with you, and I know you guys do a lot of this, but it's false then to look in the mirror and say, well, you're doing okay, but you are not doing as well as you should be doing, or you could be doing, or with some slight adjustments to your business, you could become a very, very successful business. So it's that type of thing that more motivates me today than probably the 9 to 5, career stuff and all the rest of it. But, it's not to say I wouldn't have done that if I was a little bit younger, or I could commit to those longer time periods, then probably something I would have considered.
I think it's nice, like, as you get older, when you kind of go in, when you've got so much knowledge of being like, in the big corporations, to do the consulting then and really help. Because exactly like you say, you can really see, you can take a stand from, what they're doing wrong that they can't see in their world to move them forward. So that's really good that you have that self-awareness for yourself to be like, that's not me anymore, and this is more enjoyable for me, and it's probably a lot more worthwhile for the companies you're working for.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think the other point I would just add is that I think when you go into other businesses, you don't realise what you know, and suddenly you think, "Oh, I did that in 1989," or "We had that problem in, Calgary Depot," or do you know what I mean? And you sort of reflect back and think, "We had exactly the same situation, and it was exactly." And the solution isn't you pull out a playbook, you just get back into the thought process, and then what you also do is pull on the network that you build as you go through that career. And whether it's in your home market, if you're lucky to work for a global company, the global marketplace, or it's just people that you've met on the way, and I see people on LinkedIn think I haven't seen that person for 20 years, but they've got a problem you can help them with, or vice versa. And I think that's very, very fulfilling as well as you sort of work through things as well.
I've just got one question there, Chris, and we kind of face this as well from a leadership standpoint, is when you're working with companies, even though we know how powerful leadership is from a retention standpoint, employee engagement, all filters down to bottom line, what are the challenges that you face trying to convince companies that what you're saying is going to be of huge benefit to them, even though they really can't see it and it's right in front of them?
I think I'll let the facts speak for themselves in most cases, Nige. I'm not a consultant who goes and writes like lots of PowerPoint presentations or 100-page reports. You know, if I can't tell them it in 2 or 3 pages, then it's not where I want. I call myself an operational consultant. So without sort of rubbing the noses in it, what I would do is go in and do a very, very quick SWOT analysis of a business and do a view of where I think they're at, point out some of the clear weaknesses, but also balance that with the strengths of their business as well, because they're there for a reason. They are making profits, so they're doing okay. But I think where I've sort of learned to sort of run with all this is to give people options and say, you know, you're doing okay. This is what you could do, and this is where you might end up if you don't do these type of things. But I'm not telling you there's a magic bullet or there's a way through. There is options, you know, and you've got this is. And I went to one company, and I'll be honest with you, and I told them, you know, they wanted to fix this overnight. I said, this is a 5-year fix. I said, we can do some of the clever stuff in the first 6 months. You've got some system issues, we've got some people issues, but really, this is a 3 to 5 year recovery plan for you, or you're going to have to spend tens of millions. So I think it's been clear about where they're at. You know, really sounded in fact about where they're at, and even if they might not like those facts, you know, where they're actually at. But then give them some options to think about, and let in my mind, what I've got to do is try and get people to buy into something that they then own. Because I could say, right, I think you should do these 10 things and walk away, cash the check and go, that's all I need to do. But fundamentally, as soon as I walk out the door, that's throw it in the bin or whatever. You know, so to me, the challenge is to give them something that's compelling, but has got some longevity, but it's also got something that they could buy into as well. And they've got to be able to sell it to other people. And I know they always talk acronyms, but you know, the elevator speech, you know, and I'm working with a local company now, and I ask them what they do, and after about an hour, I say, right, okay, what do you really do? And you know, to try and get to tell somebody in 3 or 4 sentences what the problem is or what are they trying to fix, I think forces them to think different as well, Nigel. I think that helps focus on where they want to be, you know, because I think a lot of companies today, and we've all probably experienced some of the same companies, who are trying to do or be everything to everybody and trying to do every single thing. And the companies that are winning, the companies that really focus in and are very clear about where they want to be, where their objective is. And in the short term, that might not look clever because you're reducing your market down. But actually, if you're the best that you can be at what you're doing, you will win through in the end. And I think that's a difficult message to sell to people, but it will prove itself to be true even when you've walked out the room, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. But I'm going to throw it back round to you again now, Chris. When you kind of talked about your journey, and you know, you obviously once you'd kind of got in Walmart and ASDA, you worked your way up the ladder. What was the skill that you think that stands out to you? What was the skill that helped you move up the ladder quickly?
I think a lot of it is, I wouldn't say it's your personality, and I wouldn't say it was your results. It's a blend of those things. I think if you're in a position where you can build a team and you can get results and you can sustain those results, you know, to me, if I'm looking at a shop today or a store, I am looking at today's results. I want to know, has that manager, have they got the last 2 Christmases right? Have they got the last 2 stock takes right? Because anybody can manufacture something. So I was always quite grounded in, you know, there wasn't a quick you weren't going there very quick. You had to be really clear. But once you'd proved yourself and you'd show people where you're at and your results shone through, then I've always found that people come looking for you rather than the other way around. And that's not always easy because, some of the challenges you get given, and you get a difficult job given to you, or you get difficult stores to look after, and probably the poison chalice would be the word I would use, and if it translates into other languages. But you have to be clear about, we're not going to fix everything, but these are the things I am committing to fix. And I think once you prove you've got a track record of those things, building a solid team around you, building an exit plan that allows you. Because the minute you walk out, many people I found especially my early years of business, would say, "Oh, when I'm not there, it falls apart and it's a disaster. And when I'm there, it's all." To me, that was very poor leadership, and it was that wasn't, because it was all about you and about you had to be paid money because there's only you could make it happen. That wasn't about where it was, and I learned that very, very early on, and probably through. I don't know if it's still relevant now, but we were always into scouting, all that stuff when we was kids and all. But that taught you, that piece about leadership, and it's, when the leaders out there, who leads the pack and all those things. So I think building solid teams, building results that are sustainable as you go through, and demonstrating that you can do those things allows people to see where you are and where you're going. And I think that's on the concept. I think for me personally, what helped me would be you have an active interest in things, even if they're not in your remit. So whilst you've got your own area of responsibility, and that is mostly all encompassing, when I used to run fresh food in stores, I need to know where the milk came from or where the meat came from. And people go, "Oh, he knows about supply chain." Well, didn't really, but I had an interest, And it's an active interest in the wider business. I've always found people look at, and fundamentally, it doesn't matter which area of the business you work in, and doesn't really matter what. If you're a people manager and you can manage people and teams, whether you're looking after physical transport, you're looking after supply chain, accounts team, it doesn't matter. As long as you can develop that team and get them where they want to be, you will go with them. And I've always found your legacy always will be the teams that you have created and seen that. And I think people will see that around you as well, and recognise that as well, and that's always been right for me. Some of it is taking out your comfort zone. Like they're going to send you to Russia or they're going to send you to Canada, but I think once you balance the risk and opportunities with that, not everything's for you. And I've turned down jobs that, in hindsight, were probably very lucrative, but for me, it wasn't right at that time, and me and my family, it wasn't right. So I wouldn't have given it 100%. So I slowed things down to accelerate them, if you know what I mean. So I don't know if that answers the question, but to me, it's about that approach to where you want to be, and staying true to your beliefs with it, really.
Yeah, 100%. Great answer.
So some of the people that we interview, we go through some of the challenges, and I'd like to know what your challenges have been in your career, Chris. And people are going about imposter syndrome, or the cripple with public speaking, or obviously what you just said, then you're good with the people part of it. But what were the challenges going through your career that you really had to focus on to overcome so you could get to the level that you got to?
I don't know. I've had to think about that one.
Oh, you just naturally walked in confident, Chris. That's as well.
Just always arrived.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is to me, if you're not nervous about going into work, or you're not nervous about starting a new job, then you're in the wrong place. So the challenge for me has probably been, I go too much into detail, and I have to know about everything, right? So if I'm in supply, I have to know the algorithms. I have to know all of it, And as you go up the ladder, that becomes very, very difficult, because you're an expert in a small thing, then you become a subject matter expert in a bit. So I would say one of my biggest challenges has always been to understand where I'm at and then have a clarity of view. And once I understand where I want to be, because once you're stuck in the weeds and you're all over, you can become very, very ineffective. So I think moving myself out of that level of detail and developing an ability to take a view from other people and take advice from other people to do the best for the organisation and the best for you at the same time is a very challenging piece. All the stuff about public speaking and all the rest of it, to me, it's never become not natural, but I was always taught very early on that you know more than the people in the audience know. That's why they're listening to you. You know, what I mean, if they're paying to speak, you speak to them. That's a different thing altogether. But
Say that again.
Say that again, because you know more than what?
You know more than they do. That's why you're speaking to them. So the subject you're lecturing about, for example, you're the subject matter expert. That's why people in the audience are listening to you, and therefore they will listen if you are telling factual truths about a subject that's interesting to them. So once you've overcome that, and I always hate this thing where people go, "Oh, I'm just going to wing it," or well, to me, if you put the effort in and you present something correctly, and you're doing it from the heart and from a point of knowledge, then I think you will always manage your way through that and do the rest of it that goes with it. I think as you go higher up the organisation, one of the bits that is interesting is you're always not looking over your shoulder, but the higher you go, there's a smaller group of people and there's a smaller pool that you're in. So if you're a store manager and there's 1,000 shops, you're going to be either 1,000th or you're going to be the bottom one or somewhere in the middle. If you're in an exec group and there's 12 people, there's only one of you. And if you're in international and there's only 7 countries, there's only one of you. So the focus becomes different the higher up the hierarchy you go. But you've got other challenges and you've got other people to sort of respond to. Adjusting to that, though, takes a bit of time to sort of process as you go through it. So I think you have to be able to finish where you can give yourself time to work with other leaders and see what they're doing and learn from them as you're going through that. Yeah. So I think part of it's inward looking at me. I realised earlier I can't be in that much detail because I would never get anything done. And the way you get around that, which might be further down on the questions, but you employ the right people around you who can manage those things and who are a lot smarter than I ever would be, but would work for you in my team, if you know what I mean. So I think there's the inward looking piece back to me. And then there is a real challenge that you have to change your approach and your attitude as you move up an organisation, because different things are demanded of you, and you have to respond in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, great answer. That, like, kind of just on that piece of being in the detail, did you have a challenge that you're aware of in how to overcome the communication skill that you then needed to kind of I guess, like I'm trying to say is, was there ever a challenge with the communication because you're so much in the detail and you like the detail? Did that show through in your communication, or did you learn how to kind of dumb it down and get the clarity across and get the point across? Was that like a kind of journey that you had to go on, or was that something that kind of came naturally to you quickly?
I think it was a journey, to be honest with you. I mean, I think I learned a lot going through different levels. Knowing your audience, I think, is the biggest piece, because there's 2 challenges, I think. One is that you assume everybody knows what you're talking about, and the other one is that you give them too much information, And I think where it became very apparent to me and I sort of changed direction was when we were moving through the supply team in ASDA House and we were presenting to the exec, and you used to go into these wonderful meetings at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning and present all your numbers and all the rest of it. Really, if you look at the challenges that were on their table that morning, we were probably like 1% of the problem, but we had 10% of the time. So really, me spouting on about there's no strawberries from Spain because it's raining is quite irrelevant to the CEO and everybody else. It's big to me because I've got no strawberries on sale. But what they wanted to know is, what are you doing to fix it? And I think that change of mindset probably took a little bit longer than it probably should do, because I just assumed, because they're clever people, that they knew all this stuff that was going on. But I knew all about it, and my people knew all about it. But would I expect the CEO or the CEO to know about that? No. But then if he asked me a question, I have to know. So that sort of balance sort of changed. But what I also learned was, especially from a logistics point of view, to know your stuff. And what Walmart taught me, you have to know your stuff inside out. I mean, we would present, capital cases for 50 million, 100 million pound depots. They would take you apart, absolutely take you apart. If you never knew the minutiae of, I got asked once how many disabled parking places there was going to be in this depot we were building, and not a clue, because it wasn't the top of my priority. Was the building and the automation we were building. And then they asked me how many toilets there were, and then you suddenly go into a different direction, that they have got the power and the ability to ask you any detail. They don't need to know the detail. So there's two sort of balances there, I think, to answer your question. One would be, you know your audience and you know your messaging. Assume they know what they need to know, but be furnished with the information if you're asked about it, and be prepared to answer anything that they want to throw at you. So you still need the knowledge base. You just need to filter the responses that you're giving to different people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant answer. Yeah. Go on, John. I've got a million questions.
Go on, you throw them.
Are we on till 10?
I know. I have to be careful because we end up going over time. But is there something that you remember when you kind of throughout your career? Was there an influence, whether it were a leader or a boss, that might have been a good influence, or an inspiring example, or maybe it was somebody that was more a difficult one, but knowing that person, it fundamentally changed how you approached your own either self-leadership or how you led other people?
I'll answer it wider. I think in the first, I think
you don't have to name names either, Chris. It's fine.
No, you learn something from every single lead, and I mean that genuinely. I spend a lot of time watching different leaders, and I've seen some of the worst leaders and some of the best leaders, and everything in between. But when I look at it, they were relevant at the time they were doing what they were doing, and some of their decision making you would have questioned, but they were relevant for a reason, or they've been put in to do something for a reason. So I think there's always the best and worst, and you can pick out that from anybody or whatever. But there is one, and I will name him, Dave Cheesewright, who was my boss in the UK, was the boss of Canada, and then was the boss of International, who knows the names of my kids and knew, he must meet tens of thousands of people and all the rest of it and all that, but knows the names of my kids, and I could meet him in the supermarket down the road from where you guys are on a Saturday afternoon in his shorts, and he was doing his gardening, and have a chat, and then he'd be in the next day on the Monday morning as the president of the company, and would have a different spin on it. So he to me taught me sort of humility about how you do things and how you do things differently, and how you can manage at different levels, but how he understood the business, how it worked, how he could read the business. I think that's probably the word I would use, read a business, where you can study a business, you can look at a business, you can look at a P&L, but if you really read a business and understand how it's doing, and he was very humbling at that type of thing, and probably he was the one who has probably taught me most in my career about why, what I do and what I don't do. But on a different direction would give me very clear feedback as well. So I'll give you a great example. When I rocked up in Canada, he pulled me in on the first day, And he was, you know, international president at the time. So I'm thinking, I need to listen to you, Dave. Right? And he went, don't come here trying to make this into ASDA, and don't bring your ASDA ways here. Meaning the 24/7 culture that we have in the UK, which is not where the other markets are, the US or Canada. But you could quite easily translate that and demand that of people. And he went, I've tried some of that and don't do it. Understand the culture here and learn from the culture. So he was very clear in pushing you and praising you and getting you into different directions, but also very clear about what he did and didn't want of you as well. But just, you know, and I think he had a good balance, work-life balance and all those things. He's a great sportsman and all those things. Tried to get me ice skating one day, which was never going to happen. But no, it was just a genuine, that guy. But I've seen him operate, you know, on the shop floor, in the front of, with us in from the trade unions in depots having strike action problems, to being up in the Walmart executive at the top table, number 2 in the company. But the humblest person I would see in the street as well. So that's probably the person. I've seen other people who've just destroyed teams, destroyed businesses, and just with the wrong attitude, and, you know, people who would never have changed that attitude either, who were just wrong for the business, and those people, you know, didn't last very long. But anywhere where there was a toxic culture, you'd always trace it back to there was a toxic leader somewhere who was leading in the wrong way. But as I say, you learn. The worst thing for me would be you would ever repeat some of those traits, or somebody say, "Oh, you know, he acts like he used to act," and that would be crippling for me if I hadn't learned from that, you know, and then moved on from there. Really.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny. I learned also coming into Walmart from the UK the same thing. And so I wish somebody had just said to me a little bit earlier, don't try and think that you can bring the UK culture into Walmart.
It is different.
Yeah, but I learned a few things in my first year.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you come back the other way. Not that I recommend it, but you instantly. I said when I came back, I said I'll never go back, and within a week you're back into it, because your phone's ringing every Saturday, Sunday. You're back into it. You can't avoid it, and the business hasn't learned and doesn't want to learn either. So
yeah,
one of those things.
We better get. Have you got?
No, I was going back to what Chris said. I remember when I got my first general manager's role, and the previous general manager had gone to a competitor, had gone to Hopewell from DHL, and there was big hoo-ha, got escorted off site by security, and I were there thinking, oh my gosh, this has just become real now. It's not. There's no training period. It's like you are taking over today, guys, and we're contract renewals coming up and everything. And we had my SVP, who was a very quiet guy, but highly respected. He just come in front of everybody. And we had like 150 associates there, stood next to me, and he just said to everybody, if we don't ship a single box today, but you all go home safe to your families, it's been a great day. And it always, and the tone of around the tone of the people who were obviously panicking what's happened. They'd had this general manager for so many years. They just felt so at ease. But within that one sentence, it just set the tone of how I'm going to take my kind of realm over. But it was just so powerful, that one sentence. And just, about Dave, just some of the things they say that in hindsight, they just say it naturally, but it can stick with you. And that were 10 years ago, and it still sticks with me today.
And they got a ton of boxes.
And the productivity targets, KPIs, everything.
But,
yeah.
But I think just on the back of that, Nigel, one of the things I would also say, I was taught by one of our ex-distribution guys was, you know, he used to come into our meetings, you all promise the earth to everybody when you don't do any of that. So it was always you under-promise and over-deliver everything. And he was like this knight on shining armour that would come through and, oh, we've saved the world. We only delivered what we said we were going to deliver, but he told them how difficult it was going to be and we'd never do it, knowing that we were always going to. But we would have promised them that plus a bit more. Do you know what I mean? So I think that sense of proportion, you know, is exactly that type. but it's a one statement that people make, and it lasts forever, and it just sticks with you, doesn't it? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, yeah. So we should probably get this wrapped up. So I'm going to ask you a final question. So as a final thought for any of our members that either might be feeling capable, but they're held back, whatever, whether any self-awareness kind of things that they're dealing with, maybe it's fear, uncertainty, self-doubt or whatever. But what's one perspective or reminder that you wish you might have heard earlier on in your journey? And if there's any other advice that you would give to people trying to move up now in their career and really trying to get to that next level?
I would say, I mean, you could have an hour on it. It's just, yeah, to me, it's always about being true to yourself. What I've learned is you learn very early on, and I go back to Scouts. So, if you've got integrity and you've got respect for individuals and hold true to those things all the way through, because it's very easy to be pushed in a direction and you think, that's not really what I want to do. This whole thing about, what would you do if nobody was looking? Those type of, so be self-aware, but be true to yourself, I think is, if you hold on to that all the way through, then everything else sort of comes off the back of that. I'd tell people, when you're interviewing people, think if the person you're interviewing is your mother or your sister or your daughter, then treat them with the respect that you treat that person. It's all those type of things. I think servant leadership it's a leadership cliche which probably gets overused at times, but I think is probably the truest thing today, and probably will still be there. There is no job, when I was coming through in retail, there's no job I would ask anybody to do that I wouldn't do myself. And that was, if the bail was broken down, the toilets were blocked, you were in a world where people could do things. You just got on with stuff, you know what I mean? And, you might be the GSM, but you'd be pushing trolleys on a Saturday night because nobody had turned up to do it. Yeah. So I think servant leadership sort of wrapped into all of that becomes the sort of the build into it. And I think one of the other bits that I probably learned, probably more in latter years, is, when you're looking for people to work with you and for you, what we always talked about was you hire for attitude, then you train for the skills. So if you find the right person with the right attitude, it doesn't matter about the gender. It doesn't matter about the ethnicity. Sorry, it's Friday night. It doesn't matter if you can find the right person that's the best for that job, and you can work with them, and then you can train them to do what you want them to do if needed. Then that's to me crucial. And the bit that I was nervous about was somebody said, it doesn't matter who you employ, even if they're a lot cleverer than you. And there's probably somebody a lot more famous than me who said that. But it doesn't matter. If you can find somebody that's very, very intelligent in their specific subject, and now I talk more in the last few years I was in ASDA, data people, people that did management information and statistics on stuff that I would get to, but might take me a month, could do in 5 minutes. And I was hesitant, I looked at these CVs and looked on LinkedIn, they'd had 4 jobs in the last 2 years. And I'm thinking they're a bit of a flight risk. But what they did for us in the 4 months that were with us was probably a year's worth of work. And so I think staying true to yourself, servant leadership comes with, in my mind, comes part of that. But I think you have to keep reminding people about it. But then this piece about, find the right people, and it doesn't matter. I'm not saying about how much they cost, because that is a problem at times, but it doesn't matter how much cleverer than they are of you, as long as you can have a relationship with them, as long as they're aiming for the same targets that you're aiming for, and they've got something that they want from your business and from you, and that's their own growth or their own development. If it helps them and helps you at the same time, becomes one and the same thing. So it always will come down to, in my mind, it will always come down to the people side of things. You know, one man can't change, or one lady, sorry, one person cannot change an entire business. You know, you can put the best document down, I can put the best business plan down, but unless I've got a group of people around me who believe in where we're going, and I can motivate and push them in that direction, then I will fail every single time. So I think all those things sort of gel into one aim, if you like. I mean, there's not one single one, but they all sort of, there's probably equal measure for them as you go through it all. And the only last one I would add is, and I was thinking hard about this the other day, would be one of the things I probably haven't done a good enough job of, and I would advise other people to do more of, is to keep a constant eye on other leaders, other businesses, and probably study more. So I came from a world where you study very hard till you've done your university, and I probably haven't picked up a book since then. I probably didn't read a book a year, you know what I mean? And looking back on things now and listening to other leaders about thought leadership and, you know, the development or side of it, it's probably a piece that if I was being critical of myself, would look back at and say, I haven't done enough of that. I've looked at other businesses who were competitors, and you remember when Target came to Canada, yeah, we studied every single thing about that, but I never looked at strategic leadership of whatever, or I never looked at, I mean, we saw AI coming 12 years ago, but I never invested any time and effort into studying, you know, changes in behaviours and all those type of things. So the sort of the caveat I would put on it would be always keep up to date with what's happening in other businesses, other leaders, and where sort of thought leadership is taking everybody. And it could be political leaders, it could be business leaders, it could be whoever. But always keep that hunger to understand why they do what they do, how do they operate, why do they make those decisions. And I'll give you a quick little example. So Tesco's, and for the non-UK people, Tesco's the biggest retailer in the UK by far, 30% market share. Every time they put the results out and are very successful, they will make 200-300 people redundant during that period. And everybody kept saying, they're balmy, they're mad. You only make people redundant when your business is doing badly. But actually, when you sit back and think about it all, and we did a bit of study work on it when I came back, what they're saying is, we're at our best, but that's not good enough. We've got to keep on going. When you're at your worst and you're struggling and you're trying to save money, it's a race to the bottom, and you're laying people off who are probably the wrong people, and then you're demoting everybody else. So they actually used it as a tool to motivate the right behaviour. So it's sort of a little example, but it always sort of comes home to me as, you know, why did they do it? Because we kept saying they're mad, they're crazy, these people. Why are they doing what they're doing? And and then you listen to people who work for them, and they go, that's what happened. And then they see another bump in growth, and then they have a year of growth. So I think it's all those things, Amy. And I think the jobs that you guys are doing in listening to people, and even if you take one thing from what I've said, or one thing from what other people have said, and it resonates, then it's one more fact that you didn't know before, and one more thing that might help you on your way. So I think it's great what you do, great what you're doing, and I think people that are prepared to listen and prepared to look at alternatives will always succeed and get to where they want to be in business and in life, really.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for ending on that with a little plug as well. But there's been so many little gold nuggets that people can pick from this, and that's exactly why we do it, because I think people then can see patterns in themselves as well when they're listening to your story, and just picking up on, you know, somebody who's gone through their career as well. and then to look back and give the advice like you've just done on what you'd have done different is is priceless.
Well, I mean, we just sat here now and we do a little debrief after this, and we're like, wow.
Yeah,
I never really knew that.
I do that? Yeah, it's amazing for us to be able to learn and.
Sorry, Amy. Sorry, Scott. The only one bit we chatted about it before we sort of started the recording, but one thing that is critical, I think, is this giving forward or giving back, and that's when you're starting as well. You know, so if it's somebody coming out of university talking to freshers on their way in, or talking to sixth formers on their way in, it is so important. And I think one of the things that we all misunderstand in business is you think that these, even kids going through education today, you'll talk to them, they haven't got a clue. You have to put it into a context that people understand. You've got to give them some faith in what they're doing. You've got to challenge people to make mistakes. And I always talk about the big mistakes like the Walt Disney's and all this stuff. People that have failed in their early careers, but look at where they are now. And I think giving back is one of the things that a lot of people in my journey have dismissed and not given enough attention to. And I think Walmart Canada and Canadians in a whole do a lot better job of it than we do over here. But what I would say, there's more and more people are involved now, and you guys I know are heavily involved with it as well. So my final bit would be if people are on a journey, don't forget who put them on the journey, how they got on the journey, and support the people who are coming behind you as well. It's so critical to get the next group of people where they need to be, really.
Yeah, exactly. That is nailed it, Chris. That's exactly our mission. Honestly, I think that it's so important, and I recognize it at Walmart because I had the privilege of having some really good mentors, and I was put in there was the women in retail group, and there were all these different mentorship groups. I was in a mentorship group with Lee Tappendale, the CEO at one point, and there were only like 7 of us. Mentorship group. And I used to go back and pass things on to my team, and they'd sit and be like, so what did that mean? And it was difficult for me to remember everything and pass it back on. And it was like, why doesn't everybody get access to hear stories and how to do it? And that, in all honesty, that's one of our passions that we've talked about for such a long time on exactly why we're bringing this.
We built this.
It is, yeah.
Well, credit to you for doing it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording now, but it's been an absolute pleasure, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes, thank you.